Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Supervisor Essentials, conducting a successful performance management process review. My name is Mary Harrison, and I'm with the Office of Human Resources as the Manager of Training and Development. Before I joined Bowie State, I have been a learning and development consultant for about 10 years. And one experience of note is the University of Maryland College Park Leadership Development Initiative, which I had the benefit of promoting and presenting and facilitating for about a year and a half before I came over to Bowie. So leadership development and managing performance is one of the topics that I enjoy presenting, because I know a lot of times people leave an organization because of the relationship with their supervisor, and sometimes they feel that the supervisor's management style is just not a good match for them. So we want to provide this session to provide tools and information and any resource that would help you do better as you're managing your direct reports and even completing the work that you have to do individually as a staff of Bowie State University. So just a few housekeeping items. I'm going to ask you to keep your microphones on mute unless you have a question. So please feel free to type it in the chat as I go on, or if you want to ask me right during the lecture part, you can feel free to raise your hand and I will ask you to unmute where you can ask your question that way. I actually prefer that type of engagement because if there's a question fresh in your mind and you want to ask it at the time while we're speaking on a specific area, I always find that that's more helpful. Okay, so today we're going to discuss what the performance management process is. I'll explain why it's important to conduct the PMP, and I will also review how to complete the PMP form. That form is a tool that helps you to facilitate a successful performance review process. And then also I'll go over a few common areas of evaluation that we have seen here at the Office of Human Resources. Well, you're probably wondering, well, what is the performance management process anyway? Most organizations have some type of structured process for periodically evaluating and appraising employee performance. And at the USM, it's called the PMP, the performance management process. And that involves more than just completing that form that HR requires you to submit by the end of April. It's more than completing the form. The process is an ongoing phase of setting the expectation, aligning the goals that you have with your teams and your department, and aligning that with the bigger organizational goals, assessing the results of how your direct reports are performing, and then focusing on their development and always looking forward to the future. So you got to see how through ongoing conversations between you and your staff, you can position them to succeed on their job, because that's the goal at the end of the day. We are here as a resource to support the successful work and performance of our teams. So it is a three-phase process. The first phase is establishing objectives and performance factors. The second part, the midway point, is where you should check in, listen to what they have to ask, or if they need any resources or additional support, and then you offer them some feedback and coaching or direction. No matter whatever level they're at, some of them are leaders as well, and they have direct reports. So at that point, you may just be directing and even giving them additional training internally or externally, so that they can use the remaining 6 months of the phase of the cycle to improve and to do better. And the final part of the phase is the review discussion, when you will be completing the form and turning that in to HR. Okay, so it is ongoing and it's a three-phase process, and we look at the full year. We'll talk about that in detail shortly. But I just want to highlight some principles. The BSU PMP is based on the fundamental principles of performance management, which describes the conditions that are necessary for excellence. And I find that employees are much more motivated and when they know how they're going to be measured and how they're going to be supported. So it does increase their productivity, and it gives them a motivation to give you better quality if the goals are clearly defined. And if they know how that performance is going to be measured, the metrics, the performance factors, and all of that. And another thing, and this is me, I like to understand how my work contributes to the success of my department overall even the division or the institution. So if you can always make that case as to what they're doing and how that feeds back into the race for excellence for the institution, that always helps people to feel much more valued and appreciated. And then having them understand that the work is timely, giving them accurate feedback throughout the year, not just at the end once you're trying to complete that PMP form, but throughout the year, staying in touch, giving them feedback on how they're doing. That also helps people to kind of have that piece that, is required to do a good job. And that involves coaching and support from you, the supervisor, having that conversation and writing it down. Documentation is key with the PMP so that, again, at the end of the phase, you don't have to imagine, okay, what happened all year? How did they do? You actually have information that you've documented to support your final report. And then a plan for recognition and rewards that are linked to the performance that you are tracking. Okay, so those are the principles of performance management that we'd like to help you stay mindful about. And the tools of performance management, as we said, it's ongoing, and the tools are the goal setting, the feedback, your coaching and directing, the evaluations, that's like you're assessing based on established factors from the job description, and then training and development planning. So those are the tools that you have in performing a great management review. We want to talk about the importance because of when you understand the why, I believe that also solidifies for you is to stay on track of the timeline of this cycle and doing the different phases separately and not waiting until the end to complete the form. One of the things that we say, and when I say 3 phases, is, and this is the beginning of the year, and actually I have to point out the new phase will start on May 1st. So we are midway, and the end of the review period will be in April 30th. That's when the performance forms are completed and due. And then right away, May 1st starts the phase 1. And some people may not look at it like that. But if you look at it like that and understand that this is a year-long process that helps you do your job easier as a leader, you will definitely keep that timeline in place and in top of mind, and also help them to understand the timeline as well. The reason why you have to conduct this performance review properly is so that they will understand how their work contributes to the success of the team and the department and the institution. And also during these phases, and you have to say it frequently and often and communicate how that performance will be measured. So once they're clear on that, they will be mindful of their output all through the 3 phases. And then, of course, providing the clear goals and objectives for them. They should understand that. And then you documenting for your direct supervisor, because the PMP form requires a signature from your direct supervisor before the employee will sign after you've discussed the assessment with them. So this PMP provides a backup for you and as a documentation. And I will say this again later. The form that you're going to be submitting to HR should be that active form that you're using all year. So you have one form and you sign it at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the PMP year, and you're using that one form throughout the year. And so by the time you get to the end of the cycle, you're submitting it to HR so that whatever decisions you want to make, you have it backup and you have it documented, and that supports you, the supervisor. Okay, so that's why you would want to conduct this review in this way. And also, I know how busy we get, especially now. Some people are still teleworking. So having the PMP done properly establishes a regular ongoing communication with you and your teams and your team members, no matter where they're located, because I know how busy you can get. Sometimes you may not have an opportunity to talk with your direct reports, and then only during that PMP period where you have a meeting and you talk through, your assessment. But conducting the PMP with a 3-phase approach establishes that ongoing communication process for you. So the $1 million question that we've gotten a lot, and most people who are still teleworking want to know, how will an employee's PMP review be different if she or he teleworks? So I went to the Office of Personnel Management and did some research because even before COVID, the federal government has had employees, about 40% of their employees teleworking for the past 10 plus years. So, they're very used to the teleworking principles and just that whole work arrangement. And what they advise is that there shouldn't be any significant difference between managing the performance of a teleworker and then managing the performance of an employee who works in the office and you see more regularly. And each employee should be appraised against his or her performance standard despite the location. So that is good news. And the other question is, how do I know if an employee is really working at home while they're teleworking? A lot of supervisors have expressed concerns that they're not going to really be able to monitor or assess their employees who telework performance because they're teleworking. But the research shows that the correct approach is to monitor the employee's work performance by shifting your focus from how much work is how much work the employee looks like he or she's doing to how much work and project completions are actually being accomplished. So the focus is on output and deliverables and knowing how to track that and having metrics for that, as opposed to them looking busy or being, chained to the office or chained to the desk. Because when people telework, you don't know where they're at, but you do see their work products being submitted or not, if they're available for meetings or available for calls. So those are the things that you can track. So by focusing on the work product or the deliverable instead of the activity, many supervisors find that they're able to communicate their expectations and they're able to manage the whole working relationship in that modality. So the resulting agreement on job expectations often leads to increase in the employees, job satisfaction and productivity and motivation. I want to pause for a moment because I know that I've said a lot and I want to give you an opportunity to ask me any questions if you have any at this time before I continue. Any questions so far before we talk about how the PMP phases work in detail? Okay. So I talked about the phases. There are 3 phases. The first phase is the performance planning and the expectation setting phase. This is where you'll discuss the job responsibilities and you'll talk about their tasks and the goal and the focus for that new cycle. So after discussing with your direct reports regarding their jobs, their responsibilities, the work products and deliverables, it's good to ensure that there is some level of agreement and understanding and what is expected short term and long term. If you can have that conversation again, because I know the PMP year here at Bowie State starts at May 1st. However, we've had a lot of turnover. People have left. Some of them have retired, taken the VSIP, different things. So you may have brand new staff who you haven't had a lot of time to assess the performance, which is fine. You have that conversation with them and then just look forward to the new period, which starts May 1st. The new cycle will start May 1st. So we're in January. You have a few months to work with them. If they're here now, they've just started, just kind of take into assessment of what they've done thus far and just keep moving forward and looking for towards May 1st, when you're going to start this phase that I'm about to go over now with them. And if you're a new supervisor, you can, request PMPs. We will definitely block out the names, but you can request completed PMPs that have been done properly. You can also research and talk with me or Ms. Hobson in HR as to how to conduct this and complete the form and just think through the cycle. I want you to start strong, starting it on May 1st, documenting the conversations that you're having with your teams, and then also negotiating, what it is they need and what you can provide within your budget. If there's training, if there's some sort of, conference they want to attend or a webinar that they need to attend, or if there's any kind of cross collaboration that they need to do with another team member or another employee so that they learn and are equipped to do the job, then have that conversation and plan for that. Discuss the key job responsibilities at this phase. Read the job description again and look at the required competencies. Have that conversation with them, and plan for development. If some of the competencies needed have not been observed, you haven't seen that, or if they're even overqualified, or they have more competencies than the job requires, you may, be able to give them more responsibility. So this is the time when you have an overview, look at your team, their expectations, their responsibilities, their abilities, overview, and then plan for the work year going forward. And then think about what your responsibilities to them is. What feedback, what time can you give for meetings? What time can you give to answer questions for the check-ins? Discuss and maybe revisit when your meetings are going to be scheduled, or how more frequent meetings are going to be held, and so on and so forth. It's important to review the current job description and then make changes if necessary. You may, with all the changes in the work arrangements and the different changes, some people have left and they don't, your office probably has several gaps. You may need to share some responsibilities. You may need to, expand the duties, and, have that just always be fluid and flexible in terms of what the focus and what the new priority is, given that this whole situation with COVID and the great resignation has happened. A lot has changed. So those are the things that you should be discussing with your employees, and let them also respond and let you know what's going on with their work and with, the gaps and how they're feeling. Just having a shifting and relevant, real-time objective setting and expectation is really, this is a great opportunity to do that. Once you're writing the objectives and having that conversation and establishing performance factors, it's important to be clear, and I'm going to talk about how to write goals and how to establish performance factors shortly. But it's so important for everybody to be on the same page, because if you may say, okay, we want to improve our, let me think of we want to save money this year. We've spent a lot of money on temp agencies. I know we want to recruit new employees who are going to stay, and we want to save money on office supplies. We just really need to cut back because we've overstretched our budget. So let it be clear, and they have to help with that. Everybody's on the same page. You let them know we have to save, we have to cut back expenses by 20%, and we got to do all of this before the end of the second quarter, and just making sure that it's clear and that the employees understand what your goals are as a leader and what your division has sent through and how they can impact your goal and you accomplishing your goals, and also them accomplishing the goals in their being more productive and more focused on what they're doing. And it should be specific, dealing with specific areas instead of being so broad when you're establishing these performance factors. It should be measurable. Of course, there should always be a metric in terms of a number or some percentage, so that if you're tracking whether you've achieved it or not, that can be clear. Of course, it should be significant. The objectives should really be relevant to what's going on currently, and things that are going to really make a real-time difference that you can relate to the department goals and the division goals and the institutional goals. And challenging, not too easy, so as not to be boring or they're not motivated anymore, and definitely not too difficult so that it's impossible to accomplish and they're not demoralized. So when you're writing, and actually, matter of fact, there is a action plan and word choice description in the chat here that I uploaded. So when you're writing the objectives, you want them to be clear and specific and measurable, significant and challenging. And there's a lot of resources here to help you learn and write these performance factors in a way that is clear and understanding. So discussing with your direct reports any expectations that you have regarding how their work is done. Your employees are the subject matter experts, and you're managing them. You're trying to accomplish certain goals through them, but they're the ones who complete the tasks. So It's easy to write a job responsibility. It's easy to read a job description and say, okay, this is what you're expected to do. But the way they do it, or the expectation on how they're supposed to do it, may not be very clear. And we find that that's sometimes a problem, because when at the end of the cycle, they feel they've done great, whereas you think, well, it was, your output was average at best, or even below expectations. So writing clear expectations for a job responsibility is important. And on the screen here is an example of an expectation that is clear and articulated in a way that one can follow. For example, manage supply inventory for upcoming on and off campus events. So your expectation is that they'll maintain um, a methodology or process for tracking that available inventory. Inform appropriate staff when the supplies are running low in order to replenish supplies before they are needed, and then monitor the supply delivery to ensure timely ordering and receipt of supplies for events. So those are three expectations that are clear, and they'll understand, oh, okay, this is what you see as a priority, and this can be measured, and you can actually look back and say, okay, did they do this or not? Yes or no. So it's easier for you once these are very clearly stated. Another example, compile event status reports for the group on a quarterly basis. So what you're expecting is that your employee will ensure the data contained in the reports is 100% accurate, of course. Deliver the reports to the group no later than 2 weeks after each quarter ends. So not only is it specific, it's timely and it's clear, and so on and so forth. So that's just an example of helping everybody to get on the same page in terms of what the expectation is. Again, why it's important to have their understanding of the goals and the performance factors and the expectations is because your supervisor is expecting you to help them meet their own institutional goals. I know that HR is in the Division of Administration and Finance, and our VP reports directly to the president. So even though I'm the trainer, I have a goal to make sure that we are at least giving 30% of my training sessions should be on wellness, because there is a great need for self-care and different things. People are anxious right now with COVID. So I've changed some of the focus on my trainings. Of course, this PMP, we're delivering it a lot earlier this year. I typically do 2 sessions, one in October and then the other one towards April, May, when the reviews are supposed to be submitted. But we're doing the PMP session earlier this year just to provide supervisors an additional support system, because we know we've had a lot of people leaving, and there's a lot of offices that um, more people are doing more than was expected because there's nobody there. So we're all expanding our roles, we're all sharing responsibilities and wearing a little bit more hats. And so our individuals' goals and our team's goals have to feed into the division goals and the departmental strategies to make sure that the school functions well, is healthy, and that our students are getting the best level of service that we can afford, because we don't want them to leave. They are our main customer. And so we have to tell our direct reports how their roles and responsibilities and tasks can support the division and ultimately the university's goals, so that the alignment is maintained. We are on a race to excellence. We want to increase our enrollment numbers. We want to increase our endowments. We want to definitely improve our brand and our reputation, so that we get an influx of new students in this day and age where there's a lot of competition with online schools. And we're not an 100% online institution. We are an in-person college. So we definitely want to make sure that your goals and people understand how their work contributes to the big picture of this race to excellence that we're on at Bowie State University. So performance planning and then having that expectation setting is important, helping them to identify 2 to 5 goals for the upcoming year or the upcoming cycle, again, which starts May 1st. And at least one goal should be a departmental goal. So if you have 2 to 5 goals, that you're having your team members focus on. At least one of those goals should support the department as a whole in the unit. And one of those goals should support their ongoing professional development and ongoing improvement of competencies. And at least another goal should be something that really feeds back into the division or your academic institute, your academic college goals, the bigger goal. Okay, so let it all be broad enough so that everything is served and not just this little tiny silos that they're performing. So direct employees should have their goals described, the action steps should be established on how they can achieve it, and the metrics should be clear on what success looks like for the goals. And the required resources, that's your responsibility as a supervisor to provide the resources for them to succeed on their job. And if you don't have that, you can report that up to your supervisor so that maybe additional funding. And I know I've been finally been allowed to have a work study student work with me to help me with some of the things that I have to do now technologically, just to make sure my trainings are better and they look more appealing, my slides. And I have some different goals. We're having we had a virtual employee recognition, which took a whole lot of different skill sets that I alone didn't have. And so, the job's ever expanding, even though it's my responsibility, but I definitely needed more resources, and my supervisor provided them. So that's something to think about. And of course, completion dates. There should always be a target in this goal setting. Okay. An example of a SMART goal. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound. An example is if the focus is, of course, to reduce expenses for your department, a draft goal could be lower department expenses, but a really strong goal could be written as, and I might have verbalized this earlier, reduce the department expenses by at least 1 to 2% versus previous the fiscal year by following the new purchasing process for office supplies. And this is sounds like a goal that will need some collaboration with budgeting. If there's a new purchase process, let your employees find out what it is and they can go through that training. I know I'm working with the purchase card office now. We're trying to develop some trainings to help people know what expense cards to use for different things to avoid, any backlash on improper expenses and all of that. Everybody's trying to save money. And also, if the focus is an IT project, I know recently we went from Skillsoft to Percipio, and so a strong goal that was written for me: configure, complete, and implement the new Workday system by June 1st, 2023 through effective collaboration with budget, do IT, HR, and other relevant cross-functional teams. So right away, that is a SMART goal, and it's measurable, it's achievable, it's definitely results-oriented and time-bound. I have a time-bound 2023, and I know I'm going to collaborate with the broader team, and it definitely has to be not only completed but implemented. So this is an example of writing clear goals so that at the end of the review cycle, you can read that and know, okay, did my team member succeed? And by how much, how well? So when the goals are clear, when they're written and documented properly, extensively, and SMART, it'll be easier for you to hold and have that accountability piece in there. Just really quick, common goal setting mistakes. Too many goals, or maybe too many. So that's why we encourage you to limit the number of annual goals to about 2 to 5 to ensure focus on the most important ones. Unclear accountability. Clarify who's responsible for achieving the goal, and then essentially which team or where is the work going to be shared. So sometimes that's not clear either. You may not know. If you're not sure, you can find out, ask your supervisor, or just do some research to see all what's involved in this work. And then also unclear unclear expected results or measure. So it's important to clearly describe the quality or the measures of the expected results to reduce ambiguity. Okay, any questions so far? So that's phase 1. And by this time, I'm assuming you all have already had that conversation with your teams. If you were already an established supervisor, you would have had this conversation when? May 1st of 2021. You would have done all of that. So midway, which is where we are now, midway between October and December, well, we're in February, you could have had this. I would have expected you would have checked in by now with your team members. If not, please do so as soon as you can, because phase 2 of the PMP is the uh, midway point where you are checking in on how they're performing based on the established goals we just talked about in the expectation setting meeting conversation that you discussed with them. And now they're going to need your feedback and coaching. So midway through the performance review period is the time to do that, where you are assessing the performance against the goals and objectives established. And hopefully you're giving positive feedback. You know, you took the time to write clear goals and establish those metrics and all the expectations. So hopefully they were able to use that and have some level of autonomy to get it done. And now you want to think about how they did and give them some feedback. And hopefully you would have put it in writing by now. If not, document. If they've done a great job. It's good to let them know. It's good to document the positive as well as the recommendations. So if you find that they didn't do, operate at the level that they could have, your feedback should be prescriptive and constructive, which means that you're holding them accountable, you're letting them know where the missed opportunities are, and then you're giving some suggestions and solutions that are productive in that, they can use some recommendations by you, not scolding, not a condescending or a negative conversation. No, it can be very positive, very enlightening, but definitely have to hold them accountable at that point if they did less than expected. Allow employees time to talk to you about where they're at, how things have gone, or possibly why, they're not performing at the level that they should be. And if they've done a great job, let them sing their, encourage them to talk about how they did it, how they're able to succeed in, accomplishing and even exceeding your expectations and all of that. So let it be a two-way conversation, not just a one-way. Then, even if they do great, you can still allow them access to the training. Maybe they may request it. We have Percipio, there's LinkedIn Learning. There are many webinars that are free. Many of them are free. And conferences, if you have it in your budget, can attend some of the, well, I believe most conferences are still virtual. So that is a good opportunity for you to let them see how you're in their corner to succeed, and then coach them. This is the time where they could use some direction. So midway through, we recommend a meeting, a formal meeting, to have the check-in. And I'm sure by now you've communicated, here and there briefly, talked on the phone or might have had meetings, team meetings, staff meetings, video calls, voice calls. That's fine. But this mid-year PMP should be more formal, whereas you're scheduling a video call or in-person meeting to discuss the PMP. You're bringing out the form, and before the meeting, you're having the conversation with yourself on how you believe they performed. You go through, review their work products, look at some of the email exchanges, and hopefully you've established that they should submit you status reports and whatever you can find, work submitted, reports that they've completed, or you can even talk to coworkers if they're not more administrative responsibilities. Whatever the type of work they do, it's good for you to review, check in, read, find out. You're just kind of catching yourself up on how they've been doing. This is before you have that conversation with them. So how much work has actually been accomplished based on their expectation setting meeting and based on the things that you've established as a deliverable or an output or an outcome for them between May 1st of the previous year to that point, this point, when you're having this midway PMP review. Okay. So you assess that performance against the goals and objectives, and then during the meeting, because you've scheduled the meeting, and hopefully you'll do it in person if you're in person. And if you're not in person, that's fine. Zoom or Teams, like we're doing now, is good enough. In that meeting, you clearly communicate your assessment of their performance thus far. It's important to restate the goals and expectations of the job responsibilities and tasks and all of the things that you've talked about before, and let them know in your estimation how they're doing. Allow for their input and their response, of course, and if applicable, discuss more opportunities in the timelines. If there are areas where there's a deficiency and improvement is needed, you definitely have to let them know about that and then give them time. Now they still have time because they have another 6 months before the PMP form is completed and submitted to HR. So you'll let them know that you definitely want to see some improvement or kudos for a job well done. Again, this is another opportunity to remind them of how their goals and their work aligns to support not only your office, but the department, the division, and BSU as a whole. Have that big conversation with them and provide the feedback in writing and provide, like I said before, prescriptive, constructive feedback, and then of course allow them training, give them coaching, direction, training, any corrective or motivational action, depending on where they lie on the spectrum. Document the discussion for follow-up. Documenting also helps you to keep yourself accountable, to hold them accountable, and then plan for the review phase 3 period, which is going to be in April this year. You know that at this point, if you've assessed that they are a below meets, HR wants you to send that information to us so that we can give you additional tools and resources to help you to help your employees succeed. Okay, so if you're at that point and your employee is below standards, you can complete a form and submit it to HR only if it's below meets expectations. Because what happens is when a supervisor decides they want to let someone go or institute some level of what's the word I'm looking for? How reprimand, and they want HR to back them up and support the effort. But they oftentimes supervisors come to us with nothing in writing, no documentation, no proof that there was a conversation that you've asked the employee to do better in a certain area. And so if you don't have that, our hands are tied. There's only so much we can do for you. So that's why we always ask employees to document your conversations with your staff. Okay. Obtain agreement and understanding. That's important. As you're planning for the next phase, which is the PMP completion form, you want to obtain the buy-in on what they're supposed to do and what they've what you've documented that you're going to be looking for. So ensure that there's agreement and understanding in the short term and also in the long term. Again, document the conversation and an agreement as a tool to manage this performance. So this agreement will serve as your negotiated agreement between you and them. Okay, this should not be hard. It shouldn't be unpleasant because they're just having a conversation and you're positioning yourself as a resource for their success. If you handle the conversation in that way, it'll seem to be more of, it's not about you or me. This is about the work and about the success of this institution. All right, because that's why you're the leader and you've been placed in that supervisory capacity to manage the work of your direct reports. And you have to report it because you will be held accountable and asked for how they're doing. And if they're not doing up to par, they're going to look at your leadership capability. Okay. So any questions? We are making progress, and I'm going to talk about the annual review, which is phase 3, the end of the review period. Any questions so far? Is it clear? Okay. All right. So May 1st through April 30th, you look at the entire review period. You're summarizing the past performance at this time. You're having that conversation of how you're going to improve future performance. And then you're also looking for areas of opportunity for skills development and improvement at this point. Now you're at the end of the period. This is April, and you are assembling all the relevant documentation. You're completing the form now, and you're discussing the evaluation with your supervisor, because there's a spot for the signature of your immediate supervisor. You sign and they sign, and then you schedule a meeting with your employee. And then you next discuss the review, past and future performance, and then you ask them to sign. There's also an opportunity for you to, for them to leave a comment on the form of how they feel that the PMP process went, how they feel about your assessment and your comments as well. Okay. So these are just some common errors that we've noticed that some supervisors have made at the end of this end of the cycle. The first one is called the halo horn effect, where the halo, you allow an employee's extreme confidence, or the horn, you allow the employee's extreme weakness to shine over all the other areas. So if they're extremely competent in one area and you're happy with them because that area might be a very high priority, you allow that to affect your assessment of performance in areas that they're not as strong. So we want to make sure that it's balanced. Okay, spread out the assessment, not just focusing on extreme competence in only one area. Shouldn't shine over all the other areas. And then the other problem is the recency, whereas managers tend to weigh all that the employees have done in the last few weeks, as opposed to looking at the entire period, because once employees know the PMP completion time is coming, they may start to perform better just for that period. They'll start coming on time, or even coming earlier, staying late, asking for more responsibility within a little, maybe 30-day window, because they know the review is about to happen. So the recency, want to make sure that you just don't only assess them based on their last 30 days, but over the 365 days. All right. Bias is when the supervisor's prejudice influences the appraisal. And we don't see a whole lot of this, I guess. Well, I've not heard it, but it happens. Race, national origin, gender, or appearance, that prejudice based on any of those factors will, will sometimes make a supervisor not look at the merit, but just focus on their biases. And some of them are unconscious biases, by the way. Strictness or leniency is a supervisor's tendency to rate employees too high or too low. So be mindful of that. Also, contrast is the tendency of an employee to compare one employee over another, rather than just giving an assessment based on an objective review of that employee's job performance. You may have two people in the office doing similar work, and then you want to compare both of them, and they assess based on how good or how poor one person is doing, as opposed to just looking at them as two separate individuals and going through the different metrics individually. So that's something that we have seen and employees have complained about. Also, central tendency is incorrectly giving all ratings near the middle of the scale. And that happens sometimes if you've been so busy during the year and you didn't maybe keep good notes on their performance, or you didn't have time to meet as often, didn't do the first establishing goals phase, you didn't check in with them midway. So at the end, that you're required to submit this form to HR. You just go to the form and you just put everything down the middle, meet standards, okay, and then move on. We encourage you not to do that. All right. Does anyone else have anybody have anything you want to add? What have you seen? Errors in evaluating, things that you may have done in the past that may not have served you? Or yes, I saw someone come on. Do you want to add anything? Questions? Okay. All right, so let's look at the PMP document. Now, just by show of hands, has everyone here completed one of these for a direct report before? Has anyone completed? Okay, Shensa. Do we have any new supervisors here? Any new supervisors? Okay, Regina, Congratulations. Oh, Maura, congratulations. Okay. All right. So this is the form, and I just took sections of it. I will go through section by section. This form is available on the HR website under Documents and Forms. It is a fillable PDF, or you can just print it out and write in it. So the top part is the section for you to put in the employee's name, their ID, the period covered, the date of review. So the date of review will be the date that you're having the meeting with them, the phase 3, their job title, the division and the or the department that they're in, section or unit, and your name, you're the supervisor. Okay. So section 1 contains the major performance areas. And if your employee is not managing anybody, if it's only an individual, he's only, performing his own work factors, you would select individual performance factors. That's non-exempt. If your, excuse me, direct report has direct reports and is a leader, manager, or supervisor, you would select the first individual performance factors and the second individual performance factors. The operational objectives is a section that you can use for work that is not necessarily written on their job description, but that has come up, maybe in form of a committee or a special project that they're going to be working on, or you're holding them to do or responsible for. You're going to select operational objectives because they're going to be written in. Now the form is already preset, but the operational objectives allows you to add certain things in there. Okay. Like when, for example, for me, when the president started to issue the Presidential Achievement Awards, that's a process that I manage. And so now it's under my, for me, it's under my operational objectives because I manage that whole process. All right. And so that's section 1, section 4, employee to sign and you to sign. So section 2 is the individual performance factors. So you have on the left column, basic work factors: quality of the work, quantity of work, timeliness, use of resources, attendance, and punctuality. So those are the work factors that you are assessing. The next column says important weight: high, medium, and low. So you'll put in a number here based on how you're prioritizing. My supervisor has said she puts a 3 because everything is really important. We do believe that these are all important factors and they are weighted, strongly. So you can choose to put 3, 2, or 1 depending on your, what your focus is. But we encourage you can use a 3 on there. The rating scale. So there's the 5-point rating scale: outstanding, above standards, meet standards, below standards, and I believe that says unsatisfactory. Okay, so there's that 5-point scale. Section 3, as I said before, is the manager and supervisor performance factors. So if your direct report is a leader, you are going to assess them on their leadership skills, such as planning and organizing. That's the leadership skills. How do they set objectives for their members? Are they doing it right? Are they establishing appropriate objectives? Budgeting. They may have resources to manage. Coordination and integration. Are they coordinated? Are they able to integrate, interact well, with others to achieve success? Are they able to facilitate the flow of information amongst, their teams and all of that? Monitoring group results, tracking and performance and all of that. So you're also assessing their leadership skills. Okay. The other factors, these are additional metrics that may not have been mentioned before that you can write in, and then you're definitely going to give it some prescriptive words, verbs, so that they're clear on what it is you're looking for and assessing. Again, you're going to give it a weight, and then you're going to give it a mark on the rating scale. The operational objectives, as I talked about before, is optional. This is an example of one. Enhance that. Now, we know customer service is a common topic. We all say we should take customer service training here at BSU. It should be mandatory. But that's something we're always wanting to improve. I'm still working on my customer service skills. So that might be something under operational standards. Enhance the friendliness of BSU by exhibiting exceptional customer service, welcoming all students, faculty, and staff, and visitors to the campus each day. That affects our brand. And of course, students want to know that they feel welcome. You may not work directly with students, but the way your office operates directly impacts the business at this institution. So for example, the results may be, now let me say this, the objective standards are written during phase 1, and during phase 3, when you're completing the assessment, you're filling in the results. Okay, that's where you're going to put in the results of how you believe they performed. Because of employees' performance, 20% of more staff, students, and faculty are now greeting each other in passing and upon entrance into offices. Customer service complaints from students and visitors have decreased by 10%. Okay, and then that sounds great to me. In fact, I would put that above standards or even an outstanding if you're writing a result like this for your team. Okay. So the rating scale, as I said before, the important weights for relevant objectives and factors are high, being a 3, medium a 2, and low 1. And the rating, rating for all relative objectives and factors using these performance levels: a 5 is outstanding, above standards is a 4, meets standards is a 3, below standards is 2, and unsatisfactory is 1. All of this is written on the form. You'll see it. And then on the other sheet is the worksheet. These performance factors are just transferred over to this column from the worksheet. And if you're completing online and typing it in, it should actually calculate for you if the form is working properly. These is you populate the weight. If you say, for example, you're giving quality of work a 3, and the rating, maybe they just did quality of work above standards, which is 4. So 4 times 3 is 12, which is weight and rating. And it'll calculate like that all the way down. It's good to complete all of these. And then the weight and the rating, the numbers calculate for themselves in the sheet. Operational objectives, these are the ones that you've written on your own and added. So give that a weight as well and a rating. And then, of course, multiply the weight and the rating, and then you'll get a subtotal that will translate to the overall score. So there's a summary here: individual performance factor, manager/supervisor performance factor, operational objectives. So these are the 3 areas in the form, and you've weighted them, and then the weighting and the rate will be here. You'll get a total, A times B, and that'll be dropped under overall scores. That'll give you a number. That number will help you know how to populate the overall performance rating: outstanding, above standards, meet standards, below standards, and satisfactory. Because the overall score is B divided A. That'll bring it down to either 4.5, and you'll see the number. And when you calculate it properly, it'll give you the number to complete the overall performance rating. And if that's not clear, I can take it again. But I would encourage you, if you've never done this before, try it and then call me or email me if you need clarification, okay? Section 5 is a summary of the overall performance. So you're just bringing in the final score here, and you are writing a specific plan for development, because we told you that we want you to think about the future. So you're completing the form based on your assessment. Do they need training? Do they need to be given some additional support? Do they need more responsibility? I mean, they're probably excellent and maybe really, really good at what they do. They can take on additional work. They can serve on additional committees. And so whatever your plan for their development is, and development also means growth. When we talk about development, we're not only saying they need to learn an additional competency or they just need to get some more skill sets. Development could be that these people are preparing for a promotion. They're ready to be given more tasks and responsibilities. So preparing for that development, professional development, is a good thing. And then timing, you can give it a time frame. Do they have, what's the time frame? 1 month, 2 months, 6 months? What does that look like? Section 7 is the employee's comment. They may want to add a few remarks or not. It's optional. And the Section 8 is where the signatures will go. You are going to obtain the signature of your direct supervisor, their title, and then the date. The next level supervisor, signature, title and date, and then I'm sorry, you're the supervisor. You're supervisor. You're the one signing first. The next level supervisor is your supervisor. Okay, and then the employee signs title and date. All right. The signatures acknowledge that the performance review has been discussed with me. So we've had instances where an employee doesn't want to sign it. They're not happy with maybe the performance review discussion or way things have been tracked or whatever. You can't force them to sign it. Um, if they refuse to sign, let us know and we will advise you accordingly. But that shouldn't stop you from submitting the document just because the employee did not sign it. If the employee signs it and wants to add an addendum or add a comment, that's fine. You can allow that. You submit that with the form. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have one. This
Okay.
is really good. Will we get a copy of this presentation?
Yes, I can share it with you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So just a review of our learning objectives. I discussed what the performance management process is. I explained why it's important to conduct the PMP, and I reviewed how to complete the form as a tool to facilitate a successful PMP. And then I also reviewed common errors of evaluation in the form. I want to highlight the appendices here, and I've put in the chat, the PMP handbook, which was revised last year. In the appendices is a behavior stroke results for individual performance factors. That is a overview of explanation of some of those metrics. Appendix B has behavior stroke results for manager supervisor performance factors. There is a performance management form. The chat, yeah, you have to scroll up. You might see it. It should be in there. You don't see it? Okay, let me put it again. You see it now? Okay. Appendix D is the work planning form and training. There's a training guide. Do you see them now? Okay. So there's a word choice document there. It's just some verbs and some prescriptive words that you can use when you're making comments, because there's spaces for your comments under each of those sections. And then also there's a form and a sheet for creating action plans that I hope will help you. I just found these and I thought to share them because this session is an hour and I know I kind of ran through it all. This session used to be 3 hours when we were in person, and there would be time for us to talk and we do some exercises and activities. So it's an hour because we find that in the virtual space, people appreciate conciseness. All right, so that's why I provided these handouts to you, and I will definitely share the PowerPoint slides with all of you who've attended today. All right. If there isn't any questions, I will adjourn and wish you well and have a wonderful day. My name is Mary Harrison. I'm going to put my email in the chat here so that you can ask me or email me a question if it comes up, okay? And you have my number as well. Call me. All right. Well, have a wonderful morning, ladies, and have a great day.
You do the same.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.